Okay, put the tea kettle on, grab your mug of tea or coffee, and get ready for tonight's tea talk here at DNG 144.
Yeah, wait, he's alive. He's alive. Yeah, wait, look. Draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh unto you. Draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh unto you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh unto you. Draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh unto you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Wait.
Shalom, shalom. I hope you all had a blessed Shabbat for those of you who have observed it. For my household, Shabbat ended, a couple hours ago with the sun dropping. I'm just looking through the chat here of the live chat. I saw some people saying that they've been talking to JJ. I'm wondering if that's the JJ that I'm aware of, or if it's a different JJ. I'm just curious. Okay, so for those of you who've kept up with the last 4 videos, this is number 5 in 2 weeks, which is quite a lot for me. I haven't done that many since like the Exodus and Jonah videos that I did with Jeff a year ago. But anyhow, for those who've been keeping up, tonight's topic is going to be a little bit more of a tea talk than Wednesday night's video was. That I claimed to be a tea talk, and it kind of was, but it was also kind of a topic study a little bit, right? I had a lot more notes and verses than I normally do for a tea talk, whereas tonight I don't have as much. I hope you guys have your favorite coffee or tea with you tonight, except for Jeff and Miranda. They're probably drinking water if they're at the gym. I think that's where he said he was going to be tonight during the video. Okay, so before we get started, let's get a few announcements out of the way. Okay, so for the past 4 days, I have been trying some new products on the beard. New beard wash and beard oil. And no, it is not DNG 144, Draw Nigh to Creator Ministries, beard oil and beard shampoo and stuff like that. We're not selling anything like that. But I'm going to vouch and sponsor. I don't know. Can I officially say sponsor? I'm going to vouch for this company. It is one of our own, you guys. This is not just a member of the body, but it is a member of our DNG 144 family. For those of you who've been watching the Draw Nigh to the Creator series, the show here at Take on the World for the past year or so, this is one of our main listeners who is here more often than not. And so I want to vouch and sponsor her company. She asked me if she could use an image of my beard for her products. And I said, well, how about I try the products and see what I think, and then not only give you a picture, but actually vouch for it. So I'm going to vouch for the Esther Jade Apothecary. And it's kind of a neat time for that too, because it's a brand new starting out company of one of our own. And I'm really big into the body helping each other and working with each other. You know, I don't talk about this very often, but it's in the back of my head quite a lot that I don't see it as much in the TO community or even the average Christian community like I do in the Muslim community or the Orthodox Jewish community. You know, a lot of those communities have rules, and I've seen statistics, and I don't remember the exact numbers, so I'm not going to be exactly precise on this, but I remember reading that they had proven it was something like, I want to say it was down to less than 5% of money spent by Muslim people in the Muslim community goes to those outside the community, meaning the majority, I think it was like more than 95% of their money funnels back into their own community. And I think that the Christian and the Torah observant communities are strongly lacking on this. I see a lot of the people in the body trying to push towards this a little bit. We've got a lot more people starting their own companies and homesteading and stuff like that. But like the Orthodox Jewish community, a lot of them have a rule an understanding that they won't go into a business contract unless it helps at least 3 Jews. So, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at all these communities that they understand. You know, you look at the Mormon church, right? And I'm not saying that we should be like any of these groups in doctrine or theology, but when it comes to pragmatism, when it comes to the practicality, when it comes to their business logic, guys, we could learn from them. Even the Amish community and the Mennonite community is also really good at this. They all have their businesses within their families. They hire from within their own family. And if they don't have DNA family that they can hire, they go within their community. And it builds, it brings together, and it builds the community. And then you can start seeing trading for services and things like this. So I think we as the body should start thinking like this. And I would argue, I'm not going to argue it tonight, but I would argue that we can see this in the book of Acts. You see them bringing their possessions together. And then when they owned land that they weren't using, they would sell it, bring the money to the body, and then the body would use. And they all had this understanding and unity and trust. And that doesn't mean unity in doctrine in the sense of that they all agreed on everything theologically speaking. They understood and agreed on the fundamentals, but they were focused beyond tits and tats of doctrine, and it was more of a matter of what is of God, what is not of God. Let's be of God. Let's move together to build his kingdom, to glorify the Father. Let's come together. And when you read, especially the first few chapters of Acts, you see them selling their land, and they even had a Levite who did this, sold some of his extra land, brought in the money. And it says that they would bring in all the money from what they sold because they had an understanding that if they were in need, the community will help them. So there was no issue of, well, if I sell this land, I might not be able to pay for it. It doesn't matter. The community, we're going to help each other. We're all putting in. And so I'm not saying that necessarily right now we should be making one bank account for all of us and putting it together. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying we could be looking at these things, some of which, I could argue is biblical principle that even goes back to Torah, and work as a community. When you look back at the Israelites coming out of Exodus, coming out of the Exodus out of Egypt, they worked as a community. Now, some of us could argue they didn't have too much of a choice, and then some of them didn't want to do that. They wanted to go back, and they took up ways of the other nations. But either ways, I'm just saying, I think that's something that we should have in the back of our head. I think that's something we should start working towards. And so when I see companies, so there's 2 of them I wanted to mention tonight. Esther Jade's Apothecary is the main one that I really wanted to push tonight because it's one of our own. I've been testing the beard oils and the beard wash and stuff like that, and I gotta message her after this video sometime tonight or tomorrow, whatever, with some of my notes and things. But I love the smell of it, and it worked really good. I have products from the secular world that I tend to favor, but I mean, this works just as good, and I would rather fund and sponsor and support within the body. So if you guys are looking for beard oils, if you guys are looking, and it's not just beard stuff, she has other stuff too. My wife's been trying a skin toner of hers, and my wife's real, she doesn't use too much stuff nowadays, but she'll use a couple things here and there for skin quality and moisturizers, some basics like that. And I asked her, I said, what are your thoughts on it? And she said, well, I have to wait. I have to use it so much until I know how my skin reacts to it and stuff like that. So she wasn't willing to give me because her and I are very specific on, if we're going to vouch for something, it's because we truly, I don't want to just say, well, I like this person, therefore I vouch for the company. I'm not willing to do that. But I've tried it. So Esther Jade's Apothecary. And I thought it was perfect timing for this because Purim is around the corner. Now, some of you might not celebrate Purim, and that's fine. I'm not one of those guys that feels you must keep it, right? There's not many who feel that way, but there are some. And I know that there are some within the community that feel like because it's not appointed times, it's not appointed times that Yah has appointed, right? And there's some arguing in that, but most of us understand that this was not, it's not in Leviticus 23. It's not one of God's appointed times. It was commanded by Mordecai. And then so some people feel, well, that's man-made. Some other people feel, well, it's within the body and it has a memory. So I don't have a conviction of not keeping Purim. It's not one of those, if I don't do it, I feel bad. And it's not one of those, if I do it, I feel bad. I don't treat it like a holy day. I treat it like a holiday. See, now my household, we don't do Valentine's, we don't do Thanksgiving, we don't do Super Bowls, we don't do New Year's, we don't do any of those. We don't do the Rosh Hashanah, right? We don't do that. We'll do Feast of Trumpets, which is often when the Orthodox say is Rosh Hashanah, and they're saying it's the beginning of the civil year. but we'll do Purim, and I really like Purim personally, even though not every year that we do it, because it's about Jews in Persia. And I, as some of you guys, if you've watched our Esther videos that Jeff and I did, you guys know that I have family that has come from Iran, from what was then called Persia, is now called Iran. Or you might go further back and say the land of Elam, right? And there's different kingdoms have taken over different parts and has different names and things of that nature. Anyways, so when it comes to celebrating Purim in my household, one of the things I like to suggest for people when they say, well, what would you do for Purim, right? And basically, if you're looking at the book of Purim or the book of Esther and you're trying to see if, how best to maybe remember that time, how you might go about it, you might see that Esther and the Jews fasted right beforehand for 3 days. So you might do a fast right before Purim. And then Purim itself was a feast. It was a celebration of the Jews being rescued from Haman's orders to have them all killed from a genocide. So the command was to have a feast. And then I think there's some verses in there too that talk about giving charity and things like that. So a lot of the Orthodox will do that. So one of the things we do in my household is this is the one time of the year that I tell my wife and my daughter, if you guys want bath bombs, my daughter loves bath bombs, right? If you want some skincare lotion things, right? And I look at the time of when Esther was being purified for that year, prior to when she was picked to be the queen. They all went through this purification stage for the king of Iran, for the king of Persia. And if you're wondering on who I believe it is, go check out our Esther videos. If you guys haven't watched the Esther videos, and you want a deep study on the book of Esther, I don't know, and I don't say this about a lot of my studies, but it's one of the couple studies I can say I'm not aware of any other Esther study that goes anywhere near as in depth as those 2 videos that Jeff and I did on Esther. So go check it out if you haven't, or if you have and you're trying to go back in the mindset right before Purim. But anyways, so yeah, Esther Jade's Apothecary. How fitting that it's Esther, right? I thought her products would be perfect for anybody who would want to do that. So something to consider. And then another company to consider that's a member of the body. It's not necessarily a listener of our show here, but it is a friend of mine and is a member of the body. And a lot of you might know this person on Facebook, is the Underhill Apothecary. And they have like a lot of balms and things like that. And it's all naturally made from their home setting and stuff like that. So if you're interested, let me know. I can put links and things like that. Okay, now that I got that out, yeah, the Esther study was really awesome. I actually kind of want to go back and listen in, as weird as it is to listen to myself, because it's been so long. I think there's things that I've probably forgotten that that is the link for the Esther's Apothecary. Okay, here we go. That's the Facebook link for the Esther Jade Apothecary. I think it might still be considered a private group, but if you send in for an invite or something like that, they'll probably let you in, and she'll be quick to get you some of the products and stuff. And like I said, it's not just beard stuff. There is other products too. She even has, I think she calls them sweet pea poo drops, things to put in the toilet so it doesn't smell up the house. Stuff like that, right? Okay. So anyhow, let's see. So Wednesday night, I said that there was 2 topics this week that were being highlighted for me, right? And Wednesday night's topic was a topic that kind of overran. Tonight's topic was supposed to be about submitting to Yah. That was the topic I wanted to get into all week this week. And then the first few days of this week was all about shining your light and that video that we did, the shine video. And I kept getting pressed on that being first. And so then once I got done with that, I went to go back into what does it mean to fully submit to Yah? Okay. And so that was going to be the video tonight. And it still kind of is, but it wasn't what I had in mind. As I was trying to put it together, I went through and I started to find a bunch of verses that talks about submitting to God, resisting the devil, going fully in, the greatest command is to love Yah with all your heart, your mind, and your soul, right? You guys know those verses. Most of you got Deuteronomy 10:12, Deuteronomy 6:5, Deuteronomy 11:13, Deuteronomy 4:29, Joshua 22:5. They all say pretty much the same thing. Love the Lord your God. Love Yahuwah, Yahovah, your Elohim with all your heart, your mind, and soul. And so I was pulling up verses like that. And then you got like James 4:7, right? Submit to God, resist to the devil, and how they go together. and I was going to hone in on that. And I just wasn't, I wasn't feeling it like I was when I first wanted to get into it. And I started feeling like a little bit of a rut and a funk on it, you know, and I don't like doing a video on a topic that I don't feel like I'm being led in and I feel heavily passionate about right before I do it. You know, this is the topic. And so I prayed on it, and kind of like the Fear Yah video, instead of pulling up more verses like I had in mind, I was like, go read the book of Acts. With the Fear Yah video, it was go read Deuteronomy. So I went and sat and read Deuteronomy for 2 days instead of writing down a bunch of notes for verses and stuff. And I studied a little bit on those. And as you guys know, I try to hone in on Deuteronomy 4-6 is what I felt led for that video. And then because of technological issues, we only got through like chapter 4, I think. But anyway, so for tonight's video, which is not going to be as organized, I got tea and coffee for tonight. For tonight's video, I was led to go through Acts and to specifically focus on the first half, the first like 16 chapters of the book of Acts. And there's a lot there, and we're not going to be doing a verse by verse or chapter study or anything like that, but there's some things I wanted to discuss. And then there's some things that I did not want to discuss that I kept hearing if I'm going to do this video, I'm going to have to discuss. Not have to, but should. Right? If I'm trying to honor Yah, if I'm trying to do these videos his way and not my way. And so that kind of leads right into what I was told to talk about that I really don't want to. So I'm in an interesting season right now. As many of you have come to know that if you listen to these videos often, or at least a good handful, something you might have heard me say once, twice, 3, 5 times is I don't like being vulnerable. And you're thinking nobody likes to be vulnerable, but most within the body, it seems to me, are more willing to share information about themselves, their walk, where they're at. Maybe they don't want to give you details, but they're willing to come to you for prayer requests, and they're willing to give you a generic idea or whatever. And some teachers, not all, but some teachers and preachers can get on the camera and they'll just tell you about everything that's going on in their life. And I'll listen and I'm like, there's definitely stuff to gain from that. But sometimes there's some details in there and I'm like, whoa, I would not be given details, even details you guys wouldn't think are details. Like I will not put my children's face on the camera. That bothers me. If you feel okay with that, that's on you. I'm not going to say that you shouldn't, but I'm not going to put my children on camera. And so even giving information about my little ones, I don't like doing that too much. And so it's not always necessarily, I'm struggling with this and I don't want you guys to think that. Sometimes it's details that you guys wouldn't think are a big deal that I still don't like to share. So being asked to share some of the things I'm about to right now was hard and still is in this moment. Ignore the chat. I'm in an interesting season. I've been in an interesting season for the past 6-7 months. And it's been kind of funny. It hasn't been a bad season. This isn't one of those, woe is me, I'm hanging on by my fingernails on a cliff, or tough trials or tribulations. It hasn't been a season of, I'm not going to say it's been a hard season. I'm just saying it's been an interesting season, and it's been an uncomfortable season, and not in a bad way, but it's still uncomfortable, right? And so one of the analogies I've been telling a couple people on the phone, which, I'll talk to people on the phone once in a while. And if you're like, you never call me, it's like, I never call anybody. I really don't. But it's not the fingernail on the ledge. Your fingernails are bleeding and you're holding on for dear life. I've had seasons like that. This is not that season. This is, I'm stuck in traffic and I have to go to the bathroom and I'm squirming in my seat. And I'm just like, come on, let's go. And I'm honking the horn. And it's taking everything within me the past 6 months of seeking the Father on how to grow in patience and spiritual maturity and behave with wisdom and gentleness and self-control of attitude and words and thoughts and taking every thought captive and all these things. But it's very much, I'm squirming in my seat. Okay. And so I've had seasons like this before, but in the past, I mean, it's been a while, and I think that's part of why I'm uncomfortable, is because it's been a while since I've been in a season like this where, I'll have one or two tests, or I'll be asked to do something, one or two, and then I'm like, man, I really don't want to do that. I just got to make sure it's the Father. Okay, it is. I really don't want to do it, but he said do it. It's going to be bad if I don't, or at the very least, it's not going to be as good as it could be, if not for me, for others. So I should just obey, right? This season, it has been, it started with being asked to move, and it's not like the move was a hard thing or a bad thing or a negative thing. I like to move and I like change of scenery and stuff like that, and it's not like I didn't like where I was going. It's nothing like that. But I also was comfortable with my house, with where I was at, and I was very comfortable. It's not that everything was perfect or whatever, or that it was better than it is now, because I can't say that, but I was comfortable. So that was a bit of uncomfortable to let it go. Okay, put up the house for sale, move. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but then after that, there was another one, and then another one, and then I took a job, and after like a week and a half of doing the job, of every day being extremely hard, and I mean, it was an hour to an hour and a half commute one way, even though it's only 40 minutes, because of the traffic, and it's high volume traffic, even in the early hours, even when the sun's not up, and you're going through highways and you're crossing state lines and things. So overall, my days for the first week and a half were like 10, 11 hours, sometimes even 12-hour days. And that was rough. And so on top of that, I kept having troubles. Like, the first couple of days, you're like, oh, it's a new job. I just need to get in the swing of things. I need to be able to think things more through. I need to make sure I'm not being distracted. And, it's a new job. It's something I haven't done before. It's similar to other work, but, I just got out of being a machinist for 2 years, and this is a whole different vibe. And so I just kept thinking I need to just do better. And so the next day I would go in trying to avoid the problems from the day before, and something else would happen all throughout the day. And these weren't like really bad things, but it was enough to where, a day that might have only taken 7 hours still took 11 hours every day. And no matter how much I was trying to avoid the yesterday's problem, something new would come up. And I would talk to some of the other guys at the workplace. And I remember after the first week, they told me, they said, man, it's crazy, some of the stuff you're going through. Most of us will have one of those issues every few months, and you're having multiple of these issues, which are normally really rare, every day. And so you'd think the little light bulb would click, a little red flag would go up, but it didn't. I was just thinking like, okay, I need to be better at my job. And so about a week and a half into it, I started realizing like, I'm going against the grain on this. What is going on? And so while I was working, I was talking to the Father, but I was mostly thinking. And sometimes, I don't know about for you guys, but sometimes for me, while I'm thinking, the Father answers me with more clarity and with more speed than when I'm actually talking to him, which totally throws me off and is completely different than my first 2 years of being born again. But it's kind of funny, and I can't help but think that maybe it's because I'm thinking these things through and not praying them, because I don't think in my head that they're important enough to take them to the Father. I'm trying to figure out how to fix them myself, because this is something I can control and fix. It's my fault. I need to work on this. And it's not like a sin issue or a spiritual issue. It's just I need to be a better worker. I need to get up a little bit earlier. I need to try a little harder. I need to push through injuries, whatever. And so, okay. Are you guys talking about the Take on the World shirt? This is from Nana Z's. The green screen's messing with some of the colors on here. But this is the official Take on the World TV shirt, which can only be found at Nana Z's, the same vendor that has all of the DNG 144 merchandise, our mugs. There's some tumbler things on there and t-shirts on there and some shofar bags. And I think they're going to be coming out with some hats and stuff soon. And Way Remnant, Jeff's stuff is on there, and there's more stuff to come. So, okay. And if you don't have Instagram, you can email this email here on the screen to make orders on shirts and hats and mugs. And if you have questions about customizing something, you can ask them there. Certain things can be changed, certain things cannot. So you can just email that. I'm not in that business. They just do my merchandise. So I can't really answer for what they can. I just know that there's certain things that they can mess with, and it's better to ask than to assume that they can't. They have color changing mugs, which is why this is like partly going black now because it's starting to get cold at the top. Anyhow, what was I talking about? Okay, so I'm thinking these things about how I need to be a better worker. And as I'm thinking these things that day, the Father speaks to me in the Spirit, not audible voice where I'm looking around, but within, right? And he says to me, what makes you think, something along the lines of, what makes you think this isn't a spiritual thing? What makes you think it's all you? And it wasn't a matter of that it wasn't partly me, but it wasn't all me. And it was just one of those, oh my goodness, have I been in such a season of just be a provider for the family, work, 5-6 days a week, 50, 60, sometimes more. I was doing more than 60 hours in that new job a week. And for me, that's a lot because I like to be around my family and stuff. I'm not saying that if you do more that you don't like to be around your family. It's just, you know, my last job, it was a little over 50 hours a week and I wanted more time with the family. And then I moved here and then I started doing 60 plus hours a week for less pay, mind you. And that was rough. But I was just trying to do what I thought I was supposed to do. I'm trying to be a good head of the house, a good father role, good husband, you know, and that means hard work, even if it's little pay, whatever I can bring to the table. And so he said, you know, maybe this isn't you. And I said, so then what's the issue then? If it's not me, if this is a spiritual thing, what's going on? And I got this heavy, this is not the job for you. You're not meant to be in this job. And I was like, man, I'm just now starting to get a hang of this. I'm feeling like I can be good at this. What do you mean? You know? And so right away, some of you might know that I might do this a little bit more than I should sometimes, but I'm quick to be like Gideon and throw out the fleece and then flip the fleece. I like confirmations. I don't necessarily need the confirmations, but I do like to know that it's of God and that it's not my mind, it's not my flesh, right? And I should have known it wasn't my flesh because my flesh wanted to keep the job. I didn't like the job, but I didn't mind the job. So it wasn't my flesh. My flesh was like, I'll stay in this job for 2-3 years is what I was thinking. And then after that, I'll probably get bored and go into something else. That's what my flesh was actually thinking. But in the moment when you hear this isn't the job for you, I'm sitting there going, there's not much employment options. I'm not really talented or skilled in much outside of teaching, preaching, if you're willing to accept that as one of my gifts. Other than that, I don't really have much to bring to the table. So I have to go through minimum wage jobs and your starter up first employment, basic low level stuff. I've gone to college. I even went to Bible college, but I never got a degree. I got enough credits to move into the next spot, and then I'd change college, and then the credits wouldn't transfer over, and then I'd be there for like a year and a half, and then I'd struggle, and I'd go. Then I went to college in 3 different colleges and still never got an associate's, even though I should have had more than enough for an associate's. But even an associate's, what's that really, you know, in terms of trying to get a job or a career? Anyhow, so in that moment, I'm asking, I'm saying, okay, if it's of you, and if it's not me, if it's not my flesh, I need you to make it clear that it's of you. So can you make something bad happen so that I can't doubt? And you guys ever pray for something, and while you're praying for it in the spirit, you're like, whoa, stop. What are you doing? Are you not right in the head? You just asked the Father, who can do anything, to do something bad for a confirmation. And so like I'm hearing in the spirit, I'm saying, can you make something bad happen so that I know it's of you? And I'm like, well, okay, not so bad. I was driving a big vehicle going fast on highways. Bad could be bad. And it's not like the Father's going to be like, okay, tip the truck. But it was one of those like, hey, okay. So I was like, something bad to where I know it's you and not me. And I get the confirmation that you don't want me in this job. And as I'm praying that, you guys, as I'm praying that, the truck I'm driving, which was like a 23-foot truck, which is it's not a semi. Jeff has driven something twice the size of that. Some of you also, maybe if you've done truck driving. But this is a big vehicle. This is not a minivan, right? And it was like over 10,000 pounds, and it's full of packages in the back and stuff like that. I'm driving on the highway, and as I'm praying this, guys, as I'm asking the Father for something bad to happen to confirm that he doesn't want me in the job, the engine dies, and the truck just stops. I have semis coming up behind me, 60, 65, 70, maybe even 80 miles per hour coming up behind me, and I'm like, oh, right? So I do everything I can, and I get the truck load into the first driveway that I can. I was able to get it to crawl in, didn't get hit by anything, turned everything off. Prayed on some things, tried to figure it out, got it up and running again. The neighbors were willing to help, but I didn't need their help. Is his shirt like moving? Okay, so I've got a green screen, and there's green on the see, this is yellow and this is green, so it's being picked up by the green screen. So that's why it's coming off. This would be yellow and this would be green, but because I have the green screen, it looks like there's some weird stuff going on. Does that make sense? Okay. So anyways, I get the truck off. I start the truck up and everything, right? And you guys are like, okay, well, you got your confirmation, right? No, because the moment the truck died, I forgot that I was asking for a confirmation. I literally just thought, I need to get this truck off the road before I get hurt or somebody else gets hurt. So I get the truck started, and then I'm on my route, and I go to the first location that I need to go to for the job, and then I go in the back. And so I was driving a different truck that day than I was the days prior. It was like the middle of the week. I think it was like a Wednesday or a Tuesday. And so I was doing Sunday through Friday. And so like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I had driven a different truck I got used to that had different doors in the back and things like that. So this one had magnetic locked back doors. And I was thinking, I was used to the other one that pulled up more like a UPS truck. So I got back there and I go to get the stuff out of the back that I need, and the wind blows the door shut and it magnetically locks me in the back of the truck. And so there's no lights in there. I don't have my phone on me. I have no access to the cab because this truck doesn't have access to the cab from the back. So after about 30 seconds of like internally freaking out and kicking the door a few times, realizing that I could be stuck in that location for a long time because there was nobody there at that location. And it wasn't very long, and I didn't do any screaming or sweating or freaking out, but it was an internal like, oh no, what do I do? And then I started kicking the door, and then I heard in the spirit, you kick that door until the door opens and it'll be damage, property damage. And not that I would have to pay for it later necessarily, but I don't want to damage things that belong to the company I'm working for. Simply, I want to be a good example, and I don't want them to be worse off because they've employed me. I want them to be better off because they've employed me, like Joseph and Daniel. So I stopped kicking it, and he told me how to get out of there. So I got out, shut the door, which was a side door, which I forgot even existed, and I couldn't see the creases, right? And it was rusted, so it was hard to get that thing open. I get it open, I shut the door, and then I hear in the spirit, you asked for a confirmation that I told you, and that it wasn't you or your imagination or whatever, that I, the creator, wants you to not be in this job. You asked for that. I made the engine die, and then I had you locked in the back of the truck. Do you need anything else? And it was one of those like, oh, how did I, like, it was, I literally couldn't believe that I didn't even recognize what was going on. I asked for confirmations, and then moment I literally get it as I'm asking for it, and it doesn't even click. Brilliant, right? Wild berry tea. Wild berry tea and blueberry tea. It's some of the best tea out there. If you only drink Earl Grey tea, you got to try wild berry or blueberry. You got to try it. Yeah, here's your sign, says the chat. So so I said, okay. I said, okay, you want me out of this job? And I said, I get back in the truck and I said, can you make the rest of the day go smooth? You know, because it's been rough up to this point. And I said, if you make it go smooth and don't let me forget that you want, like, not just forget, but don't let it leave my heart that you want me out of this job. If that's indeed what you want, let it go smooth for the rest of the day. And it went perfect. And I was home by 3 o'clock, you guys, right? So did I put in my 2 weeks that day or the next day? No. No, I wake up the next morning, crack of dawn, get ready to go. I wake up with the feeling of, I want you out of this job. And I'm getting ready for the job, and I drive all the way out there, get everything ready, fill up the truck with all the packages. After a couple hours, GPS nonsense. I really don't like technology. Dealing with all that stuff, get out on the road, and then I'm praying, I'm asking for the day to be smooth. And I said, please let the rest of this week be smooth as a confirmation as I mentally and emotionally and spiritually come to terms with. And it's not like I love this job. It's not like this job was utilizing my skills. Right? It's not like I've always done truck driving. I've always done this, and I'm really good at this, and woe is me. So I don't know why I struggled with it so much, but I did. I struggled with it. And so during that week, it was the smoothest week ever. Unlike the first week and a half of doing 65 hours, it was like close to 50. And I was getting home early. I was getting home to where I wasn't tired enough. I could actually hang out with the little ones before dinner instead of showing up right as it's time for them to go to bed or after they went to bed, so that was cool. And but every day woke up with the feeling of leave your job. And all day it was there, would not go away. And it's not like it was pressing down on me or made me sad or scared or anything like that, but it made me uncomfortable because I didn't want to give up the job. And it's not even because I love the job. What comes next? So then the rest of the week I was asking what comes next. And he was not giving me an answer on that. He only said a couple of things to me on that. He said something along the lines of, it's time for you to do something along the lines of, it's time for you to do what I've made you to do. No, I'm not talking about blueberry coffee. I'm talking about blueberry tea, Kelly. Blueberry tea. No, coffee. I do dark blend coffee, Ethiopian coffee, Sumatra coffee, and then I put honey in it. No, I'm talking about blueberry tea. I see blueberry coffee in the chat, and I was like, I have to fix this real quick. Anyways, so for the rest of the week, I'm praying for it to go smooth, and it goes smooth the whole time. And the feeling's not going away. And then by the end of that week, I kept feeling the whole, okay, are you going to put in your 2 weeks? Or are you going to quit? And I was struggling. I was like, well, it's been going smooth. And he's like, you need me to make it hard again in order for you to want to leave? And I was like, no, I don't want that. But, I want to leave on good terms. And I just finally gave them a smooth week, and they're starting to build up on me, and they're starting to give me more responsibility. And I felt like the company needed me, but it's not like they were going to hurt without me, as long as they knew ahead of time that I was going, so they could find somebody to replace me. So I go into the next week, right? The week after that, and didn't put in my 2 weeks. And about halfway through, I got attacked by a pit bull. I got a tooth in there and tore up some muscle, and it wasn't anything like, flesh hanging down and blacking out or anything like that. It was one of those, I looked down and I saw the white fat of muscle, and I was like, ooh, that might not be good. And I didn't think I was traumatized, but I guess I was a little bit, because after that, I didn't want to go to locations with dogs. And in the area that I'm at and doing the job that I was specifically doing, dogs that were not being supervised, like Rottweilers, Pit Bulls, Great Danes, things that sometimes looked mean, sometimes didn't look mean, but either way could really do some damage if they wanted to. It was common. And that was hard. But anyways, after the dog attack, I realized it's time to put in the 2 weeks. And I said, okay, let me get to the end of this week, and then I'll put in my 2 weeks. They gave me a few days off to let the stitches heal up and stuff like that. And so I did that. And at the end of the week, I ended up getting stuck in a tornado storm and almost didn't make it home. And I didn't get hurt or anything like that, but it was pretty intense. Couldn't see anything, and I was determined to get the truck home because I just moved to this location, so I'm not familiar with this area very well. And I had no idea when the storm was going to be done with. And I kept feeling internally that the storm was going to go all night. And sure enough, in the area that I was at, when I was thinking about pulling over because I couldn't see anything, it would have went until like 6 a.m. So I would have had to sleep in the truck for 12 hours. So I got home. It took me a long time. I mean, I was only like 40 minutes away from home, and it took me like 2 hours because I had to crawl because I couldn't see anything. I mean, it was so bad. I mean, and I've driven in a tornado storm twice before. I actually got picked up by a small tornado once, and they don't technically call it a tornado. If it was really small, they called it like a cyclone or something else, but it was like a miniature tornado. They actually lifted me and my dad up in a van and had us like kind of grind like a skateboard on a guardrail. It was pretty intense because we looked down through the shattered windows, and we could see that we were like 2.5 feet above the ground. That was pretty crazy. And then there was one other time with another job back in Illinois where I was driving, and I didn't see the tornado, but I mean, you could hear the train sound, and again, tree branches were flying. But this one was scarier than both of those because it was dark. I was in a big vehicle. I couldn't really pull over that I could see. I mean, I only had like 2 chances to pull over because I couldn't really see where to pull over. And these roads in this area are very narrow, and the drop offs are so bad that it would actually been dangerous for me to try to like pull into a subdivision. If I had the tire off, then it might tip, and that could have been bad. But yeah, so it was intense. So after that, I was like, all right, hands up, I'm done. I'm going to put in my 2 weeks, you know? And so I put in my 2 weeks after that. So anyways, so you put in your 2 weeks and it went smooth and everything was going good. And, you know, I kept hearing patients, right, as I went to put in my 2 weeks and stuff. And I was kind of scared to tell the boss. And the boss was a believer and he completely understood. And he was talking with me and he was like, I'll pray for you. And he's like, dude, if God's telling you to get out of the job, I don't want to see you go. I like you. You're a good worker. He did say that. I'm not just making that up. But he was like, you know, if God's telling you to go, then get out. And he was a pastor. And yeah. So anyways, it went really well. But during those 2 weeks, I did struggle with patience a little bit. And it was kind of funny because I kept hearing patience in the beginning and I was like, I'm not in a rush. You tell me to do this. I'll listen. I'll obey. Right. Well, I had been hearing to leave for like 3 weeks or so prior to those 2 weeks. So what I wasn't comprehending in my mind is that when he first told me to leave my job, if I'd put my 2 weeks then, when I would have heard patience, I would have already been out and would have been ready for the next step. But I wasn't. I didn't turn in the 2 weeks right away. I wanted to make sure that I was of him, and then I struggled with it. And then I was like, well, let me see what my next step is. I don't want to just quit a job and then take up another job. And I'm asking him what he wants me to do. And he's like, I want you to do what I made you to do. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Because if I'm going to be honest with you guys, I feel like my purpose, other than being a husband and a dad and stuff like that, is to preach and teach. So it's like, that does not pay the bills. So what is it you want me to do for work outside of that? And I kept getting the same response of either I want you to do what I made you to do, or it's not for you to know what the next step is. You don't take a leap of faith knowing that you're going to land on safe ground or in the water, or knowing how far the fall is. That's not a leap of faith then. You know, it was that understanding of like when you're in the military, you know, you get a command, you don't always know why. You just know what and how they want it. You don't necessarily know why. You don't even know what the mission is half the time. At least in our army, we know that the ultimate mission is to glorify Yah, to do whatever his will is, right? We know that is the ultimate mission. So even if we don't know the details of certain orders that we might get from the commander of the host of the army of Yah, at least we know the ultimate goal. We know the true mission, the depth of the real mission. Whereas in the military, I didn't always know what was going on. You know, they just say, hold the machine gun if it gets bad, take care of things. No idea why we're meeting with sheikhs and why we're doing all this other stuff. And I'm not going to get into that. But anyways, so those 2 weeks was actually really hard for me to be patient, because in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, it's just 2 weeks. That's not hard. But it was really like 5 weeks of not knowing what comes next. And so here we are, guys. That was a bit ago. And I still don't know what the next step is. Meanwhile, I'm continually being asked, and this is not a woe is me or feel bad for me. It's not. Some of you guys, or maybe all of you guys, are being asked to do things that takes more faith and trust. And you guys might be more obedient than I am in a lot of things. So I'm not trying to say like, look up to me as anything, or be like, oh man, we got to, you know, no, it's nothing like that. Maybe pray for me though. But usually after a couple things you get asked to do that you don't want to do, usually in the past, I would start seeing the fruit or understanding some things before the next one. And he's been carrying me through. Please do not I don't want it to be misconstrued like I'm complaining, because I have no right to complain. We never do, right? But I have no right to complain. He has provided and taken care of me and my household this entire time. I mean, like I said, the job I had was actually making less than the job before that, even though I was working more hours. He's been taking care of me. So I'm not hurting or struggling financially or anything like that. We're not at that point right now. And yeah, I do get to volunteer more now, whereas I wasn't before. That was kind of funny. You bring that up, Kelly Joe, because when I was doing the job, I remember thinking it'd be nice to do community service like I used to years ago. But in the past 5 years or so, I've been working 50, 60-hour weeks. And maybe it's not right of me, and maybe it's super selfish of me. But I would only get like Saturdays, and sometimes Saturdays and Sundays, and sometimes just Saturdays. And I was like, that's family time. That's Shabbat time. So I, you know, especially the last few years, it's been family and hiking if I'm not working. Anything outside of that would be like maybe doing videos and studies and stuff like that. But I wasn't doing really any community service when I was in Ohio and stuff like that. I got invited to a couple things, and I prayed on it and felt like I wasn't supposed to go. There was a couple things I did go to, and I really didn't feel like I was being led in the moment. Like I had nothing to contribute, and I kind of just sat there and felt kind of dumb. So I really didn't do anything in Ohio. So that was one of the things I was thinking in the job, was that I'd like to do community stuff, but I'm working a lot. Well, now I'm not. So I do have time for volunteer work and community work, and I'm trying to build up that more. I'm doing some stuff already a little bit, but nowhere near as much as I think I'm supposed to be doing. But I also think I'm supposed to be taking steps in that. So it's a weird season I'm in. So how does that all tie into tonight? And why do I feel vulnerable in saying that? Because I have to confess and admit that I got clear orders and instructions and took my time on it, even though it's coming from the creator, and got all the confirmations that I needed to know that it's the King of Kings. And I still was like, I'm not there yet. I'm like, who's the commander? You know what I mean? And then on top of that, outright coming out and saying that, you know, I'm the past 6 months I've been taking steps, and I'm currently in a season where I'm taking steps where I have no idea what's next. I really don't, you know. And so in between that dropping that job and doing videos a lot lately, I actually took a few weeks to try to figure out what it was he wanted, because right away I was thinking, well, I'll just do ministry, and I'll start going back full time into online stuff, and then if he wants me to do something else, he'll divert my path. And then I went to go do it, and then I got that thought, and I didn't know if it was me or if it's the Father or the enemy or whatever, but I thought, you know, what if I'm not even aligned enough to be doing that like I used to? And so I wanted to take some time to make sure, you know, because when you teach and when you preach, you're actually held to a higher standard of responsibility. And that doesn't mean you get to be above people. It means that more is required of you. And sometimes that can freak me out. If I don't feel like I'm exactly where I should be, then I don't want to be in a position that looks anything remotely like leadership, because it's like, no. There's more consequences when you don't have things the way you should in that position. Unless I'm absolutely supposed to be in that position, I'd much rather quietly go back and be a machinist and stuff like that. And it's crappy to say that, because I get sermons and I get studies, and it's not just, I get sermons and studies and topics and things, and led and pushed to preach them to the point where, like, I know it's not just because I want to, because half the time I don't want to. The last 4 or 5 videos, most of them, I didn't want to do those videos. Those weren't topics that I wanted to do. I'd like to go back to doing the first Samuel study. I like doing Bible story time. We can talk about the Bible stories. We can talk about the relationships of the people, and there's lessons and morals in there, and we can speculate on certain details. But overall, I like Bible story time, right? And I do believe he's going to let me go back and finish that first Samuel soon. But anyways, so what am I getting at with this? I sat down feeling like I should be talking about fully submitting to Yah. And the picture in my head was, I was going to come on here tonight and preach about, we need to be giving our whole heart to the Father. We need to be coming to him and asking him to show us the parts of our heart that need to fully submit, that haven't submitted yet. If we think we're all in and we're not, which chances are we're not, right? Even if we are for a season, we might be in a season where we're not anymore. Well, I've been all in for so many years. Yeah, maybe you were then, but what if you aren't now and you think you are? Are you all in? Do you know that you're all in? You're ready to go. And I'm not trying to attack, and I'm not trying to point fingers, and I'm not trying to assume that you're not, but it seems to me, typically, me included, big time, the body is not all in as it should be. You know, and when you read the book of Numbers and Deuteronomy, and you look at, over 1 million people. They had like something like 600,000 that were over the 20 for the age of war and stuff like that. But overall together, you got the women, the children, and then you got some of the other people that they brought in. You got the Egyptians as well that they brought in, and you got other nations that came. The sojourner and the stranger that comes with you, what do you think that means? Non-Hebrew. And we're talking over 1 million people. Some speculate somewhere between 2 and 4 million. Okay, and coming out of Egypt, Joshua and Caleb went in, and those below the age of 20, which means they didn't come out of Egypt because they had been out of Egypt for over 40 years. 2. And what's it say about Joshua and Caleb? Because they were of a different spirit. They were following Yahweh with their whole heart, their whole mind, their whole soul. Narrow is the way. Few be that find it. And so that's what I wanted to get into tonight. I wanted to encourage and push fully submitting. And I was going to try to find the verses that talk about on how to go about that. And then you got the verses that talk about, show me my heart, Father, and cleanse my heart, give me a new heart, search my ways and anything that's wrong. David's got all kinds of verses on this in Psalms, right? And there's plenty of things in Proverbs, and it talks about get knowledge, and not only with your getting, get wisdom, and with your getting of wisdom, also get understanding. And there's all these things that we can talk about. And like Karen said about, you got pure joy and all these things, and these are all good things, right? But I was in a weird funk and not feeling it. So I went and read the book of Acts, and I was like, hey, you know what? If the Father tells me to go read, I'm down for that, because it feels less like work to go and read scripture and just get into it than it is to sit here and be pulling up the Hebrew or the Greek or the Aramaic and trying to find all the different notes and look at the Strong's Concordance and then pull up other sermons and videos, put them on 1.75 or 2 times speed so I can get through 3 hours in an hour and a half, so I can do another one and then another one and then take notes and then, see which ones I disagree with and why, and then counteract those things, which I do sometimes for these videos, right? But if he says go read, I was like, fine, I'll just go read. And so I read Acts and yesterday and today, and my wife's like, so what are you going to do tonight? And I was like, I don't know. And I kind of had a feel of it, like, not that the topic changed, but it kind of felt like it changed a little bit, right? And at least in the approach and how I was going to go about it, the perspective of fully submitting to Yah, because I wanted to talk about what that looked like. And I think tonight what I want to focus in on is how to start that process, wherever you're at, how to start that process, okay? And so the picture I kept seeing in my head was a man putting on sandals, okay? So I don't know about you guys, and I'm not claiming to be an expert on the culture and history of Israel. I'm not, okay? Jeff and Chad in the chat and stuff like that, they're a lot better than I am on the history and the culture of how they would have seen things and done things. I might disagree with them on certain things, but overall, those guys are way more knowledgeable than I am about the history and the culture of ancient Israel and certain things like that, okay? But what I do have an understanding of a little bit that I think I might be able to bring to the table tonight is Middle Eastern culture. So as we've talked about before in some of these videos, a lot of my DNA is from the Middle East, right? And so like my mom's mom actually came to the US from Iran. Her family was in Iran. And then from before that, it would have been from Iraq and Armenia and stuff like that, right? So I'm partial to Persian and Assyrian and Armenian history and the cultures and things like that. And so growing up as a little one who would go visit my Metz mama and my papa, my mom's dad, who was a reverend, a pastor for something like 50 years, and his wife, my Metz mama, my mom's mom. And she would tell us about, she had this, not obsession, but like fixation when I was little. You go outside and play, right? My generation, you'd be outside all day and you go and play and you get dirty and then you come in and she'd say, go wash your feet. Okay, now I was not a Bible studier back then, so I used to always think like, wash my feet, And so I remember talking to my mom about this. I was like, what's with your mom's, every time I come in, wash your feet, go wash your feet. Well, in Iran, when she was growing up, you'd wear sandals, right? Which when I was in Iraq in 2006 from 2006 to 2008, and then again from 2009 to 2010, Most of them wear sandals, at least when I was there. And that was only like, we're talking about 15 years ago, something like that. So they wear sandals there. And these are dirty countries, right? Even in the cleanest areas of like Baghdad, or it seems Iran has a lot cleaner, wealthier areas than Iraq does. And I've gone as north as like Mosul and Kirkuk, and then all the way south of Iraq. I've seen a lot of that country. I spent most of my time in Abu Ghraib and in Baghdad, but I've gone way up north, up there in the mountains, up in the top, and I've gone way down south as well. So I've seen it all throughout the country. Sandals were the thing. My Metzma mom would say, wash your feet, because whenever they would come in, right, you'd come home from work, you'd come home from school, you'd come home from being out, you'd go out and do errands, you'd come back, whatever, you'd wash your feet. And you'd wash your feet for many reasons. You don't want to track in the dirtiness into the house, right? And you might be barefoot in the house, you might not, but either way, you don't want to track the dirtiness. These are sandals, right? We have to think these are open. There's not like the tennis shoes that we see most Americans wearing. But they had other concerns as well. It wasn't just the dirt and dust. It was things that could actually get inside you, like tapeworms. And I remember it took a few times for me to comprehend this, because I was like, what do you mean tapeworms just get in between your toes? And they're like, oh yeah, they'll get between your toes. And if you don't go and wash your feet when you get home, they'll get in there. They'll actually push in between your toes, get in the skin, and then you have a tapeworm inside your body. And you don't want that, right? I mean, for all kinds of, you don't want health issues in the Middle East, right? So I get this picture of a guy putting on sandals. And I'm thinking about the Middle East and the culture, and we've got what they call the Jesus sandals, right? The Yeshua sandal. I got some Yeshua sandals from my wife from Israel. Actually, they're really nice. They're brown with a little red tint of leather on it. And we think about like David going against Goliath. Was he wearing sandals? What were these guys wearing on their feet? When we talk about like the armor of Yah, and we're fixating on the spirituality of it, you got the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, right? Something like that, the sword of truth. Am I getting some of them wrong? Do I need to look this up? There's a belt and a sword. I probably should be pulling this up and not just guessing. And nobody feels like pulling it up for me, I guess. I was half expecting the chat to be like, here it is. It's in Ephesians, 6, right? Pull the sword. Yeah, Jerusalem Crusader sandals. Yeah, it's always so funny that the armor of God images, they always use Roman armor. Anybody else get tripped up by that every time you see it? It's like, why are you using belt of truth? I thought so. Yeah, 5:16. I thought it was either 5 or 6, but I really thought it was like 6:13. I don't know why I thought that. Okay, 5. Let me get out of the Strong's and Concordance. 5:13. No, that's not right. That's reproved or made manifest by the light. Let me see if I got it right. Let's go to 6. Yeah, see, I was right. 6:13. Okay, so we'll go verse back. Okay. My brethren, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. There's a good verse talking about going all in. Having done all to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about truth. There's your belt of truth. Having on the breastplate of righteousness. I think I got that right. And I wanted to leave the feet for last. Okay, so you got taking the shield of faith, where you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Okay, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, watching thereunto with all preservance and supplication for all saints. Okay, so your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace, of shalom, right? If it was in Hebrew. I don't want that. Oops. Okay. When you go to leave the house, you have your shoes on. I don't know about you guys, but in my house, we tend to like to have shoes by the door. We don't want to bring in the outside of the house into the inside of the house, right? We don't want it trekking through. No matter your views on germs or whatever, we don't want whatever's on the street or in the grass or whatever. We don't want that trek through the house. So we put our shoes at the door. And we have 2 doors that we tend to use. Well, 3 doors, but we keep shoes at the door. So when you go to leave, that's one of the last things you do, right? And what am I getting at? What's my point? You have your clothes on inside the house as you're walking around typically, right? And if you don't talk about it in the chat, okay? I'm just saying you're not leaving the house without your shoes, typically, right? Whether you go to do some chores, whether you're going to work, whether you're going to go see somebody, you're not going anywhere until you have your shoes on. I don't know about you guys, but like my wife will be like, all right, come on guys, let's get ready to go. And we sometimes bicker about this, like not hardcore bicker, but like funny bicker to where we sound like old couple. Where my wife will be like getting the little ones ready and stuff. And she's like, you know, you're still sitting there. And I'm like, yeah, I know, because I know that when you say it's time to get ready, it's still going to be 20, 30 minutes at least before you're ready to leave. And then, so of course, there's this bickering back and forth of like, well, if you were ready and actually helping, then maybe it wouldn't take so long and it wouldn't be all on me and stuff like that. And I'm not saying she doesn't have points there, but my point is this. You can, in your mind, say, I'm ready to go. I'm getting ready to go. I'm getting ready. I'm ready to leave the house. I'm ready to go do community service. I'm ready to go do Bible study. I'm ready to go visit churches. I'm ready to go help the homeless. I'm ready to go do good works. You can say, I got my clothes on. I got the armor of God on. I got the salvation, and I got the righteousness and the truth and the faith, right? And maybe you even say you got hope and things of this nature, but you're not going to leave the house until you put your shoes on. Until you put the shoes on, you're not actually ready to go. So you might tell yourself you're ready. You might tell everybody else in the house you're ready. The heart is deceitful, right? You can tell yourself, oh yeah, I mean to do this. I have good intentions. I plan on doing this. But if you don't have the shoes on, I'm going to sit on the chair and wait for you until you have those shoes on, because I know you're not going to go anywhere until you have shoes on. You guys see what I'm saying here? So I keep getting this visual of this guy putting on sandals. And in my mind, as I'm seeing this guy putting on sandals, it's like a mental affirmation within of, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to leave my house and go and do. Go make disciples. Go baptizing in the name of. Go heal. Go lay hands. Go be there for the widow and the orphan and the homeless and those who are in need. Go speak truth. Speak love. Be merciful. Be compassionate. Go be with the assembly of the body. Go edify the body. Go tell them in and out of season. You guys, that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight, was in and out of season, because I did not feel like doing this video. I almost didn't do this video, and it's not because I felt sick or like I just didn't want to do the video. I just didn't feel hyped up to do it. And like I don't like doing a video where I'm like not even sure of what I'm going to say or how I'm going to go about it. I had a little bit of an idea, but not really. And it was one of those, you know, and I tend to get a little bit anxious and nervous right before a show. And so then I talked to the Father, and I'm like, you got to put the words in me. It's got to be your words in my mouth coming through me, or else it's garbage and it's not worth doing it. And if there's any part of me that wants to do it, even if that's not the case and that's not good and it really shouldn't be doing videos. And so I'll be praying to him about things like that. And I don't like the feeling of going before the camera. And, you know, tonight I was like, well, maybe you don't want me to do the show. I'm not really seeing any confirmations, and I'm not really feeling like a heavy urge to do this topic. I know what you had in mind, but I don't know. Maybe not tonight. Maybe we'll do it next week or something. And then I got reminded of some of the plans I have for next week. Next week, Jeff and I, Yah willing, are planning to start a series on As in the Days of Noah. And I don't know how hard we're going to hit it, but it's probably going to be pretty hard, in the sense of at least on the same level of maybe Esther and Jonah, maybe somewhere around there. Maybe not as hard as Exodus, right? Because that was, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about and you're getting ready for Passover, or if you want to study on the first 14 chapters of Exodus and you want it presented to you to where it's like going through as much as you could imagine on every verse, we've got you covered. The Exodus series is another one of those few examples that I can give you where I can say I'm not aware of, and Jeff and I watched many hours of a lot of other people's presentations on Exodus. I'm not aware of any other presentation like our Exodus presentation. I mean, you got to keep in mind too, some of our notes came from everybody else's. So it's not like we're sitting there and taking the credit for everything. We just try to compile it all together and then bring our notes in as well, and then discuss back and forth. And Jeff and I were agree or disagree on certain things and stuff like that. But yeah, feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of shalom, peace, harmony, tranquility, right? Yeah, your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. We actually made D&G 144 socks that says shalom on it once with a really cool background. And it was like it was a cool thing way back years ago before anybody knew about me. And I was not anybody, but I had nothing to do with Take on the World back then because I didn't know anything about them then. You got your shoes on. Preparation of the gospel of shalom. That can and often does involve your personal testimony. Don't get hung up on the whole Romans road to salvation or John 3:16 or these other formulas that a lot of people do where they go door to door or walking through the cities. And I'm not trying to bash, but it reminds me a lot of what those who don't have the indwelling do as well, right? The Jehovah's Witness and the SDA and the Mormons and stuff like that. They have formulas, certain verses that they stick to. And then you ask them questions and they don't know what to do with it because they need to stick to their thing. Don't get hung up on having a formula. Don't get hung up on making sure you have, okay, I want to witness, but I'm not sure what I'm going to say. So I'm going to plan out the Romans road of salvation. My advice is that you go with your shoes on, asking the Father to guide you with the Spirit, and be prepared in or out of season, whether you feel like it or not, whether you're in a season where you're feeling amped and you're in perfect alignment, or you're out of season to where maybe you're not in alignment, or maybe you are, but it's kind of downtime, you're taking some time off. In and out of season, you are to be ready to give an answer as to the hope that is within you. In and out of season, if you have your shoes off, you should be willing to put them on. And you might sigh, and maybe you're not as eloquent or articulate. Maybe you're not as patient as you normally would be. But in and out of season, you are ready to share the hope that is within you. You're ready to talk about shalom. You're ready to talk about your experience with the Father, because that's your testimony. Nobody can take that away from you. A lot of people want to talk to unbelievers or skeptics with Scripture, but they don't view Scripture like the believer does. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't bring up Scripture. I'm saying go by the leading of the Spirit, because if the Spirit tells you to use Scripture and to actually open it. One of my favorite moments, right? Because I used to do street preaching and evangelism, right? They're like military recruiters. I wanted to talk about the military a little bit tonight. Maybe we can do that, and then we'll wrap it up here soon. But they're like the recruiters. Recruiters have an office, they have a location, but they also go out and they're in uniform, so you know who they are. Or at least when they come to you to recruit, you can identify. They're wearing the proper uniform, right? And they would come up to you and say, hey, have you ever thought about joining the Army, the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force, whatever? And they talk to you about the good stuff, the stuff that it's done for them. Hey, we've got bonuses. We can get you set up so that you can learn a career path. You're serving your country. There's nothing more honorable than that. And they don't necessarily always push you to where you have to run away, but they are ready to tell you why they think it's a good thing. They're ready to tell you about the benefits. And they might say things like, hey, it may not be the easiest job in the world, but there's different positions and stuff like that. And, I don't know what you'll do. There's testing and, everybody has different skills and jobs, right? Not everybody that goes in the military is combat. I was combat, but they wanted me to do admin because my scores were really high and it was all towards admin. But they didn't know that in white collar environments, I don't tend to do well because I tend to be too blue collar in my mannerisms for white collar environments. And I struggle with being refined in appearance and presentation and because I feel like I'm faking it. I don't like the fake it till you make it. I don't like the put on a smile to make somebody else comfortable. I don't like feeling like I have to be fake in order for somebody else to receive it. If you can't receive it, that's my personal view on things, right? So I don't tend to do well in white collar environments. So I want combat, where the blue collar environment tends to find me too white collar, but they'll still take me in. They'll laugh at me, but then once they realize I'm willing to stick it through, they see that I'm loyal, that I'm trustworthy, and that I'm a hard worker. Then I become one of them. Whereas the white collar, I've yet to be in an environment like that where they are able to take me in because I make them uncomfortable. But these recruiters, they're willing to come up to you and they'll tell you, hey, you know, when I was I've been in the Army for 10 years now, and I could actually retire by the age of 32. They can tell you those things. You know, when we think of evangelism, it's like we have this indoctrinated, ingrained picture in our mind of what the world has already seen and heard over and over and over again, mostly by people who do not have the indwelling. So if you have the indwelling, but see, that's the thing, right? And I'm not trying to make people uncomfortable, but this is something I have to do a lot. Not everybody that thinks they have the indwelling does. And I'm not trying to make you guys question your salvation. I'm not trying to get you guys to question your relationship with the Father. If you know, then you know, then you know. Don't doubt. But if you don't know, make sure of your election. That's what Scripture says. And there's verses that people use and they skip the verse. It says, you know, the spirit that dwells within covers you, if so be that he's in you. But people skip past that. Why do you have people knocking on a closed door when Yeshua says, I never knew you? And so many in the TO community gets hung up on the worker of iniquity, as if we within the community still don't transgress the Torah. And some might argue that iniquity is different, and I don't want to get into it all tonight. My point is, for me, I tend to focus on the I never knew you. That sticks out to me because they knocked on the door with expectation, which means they thought they knew him from what they have seen and from the false security and the false hope that has been presented to them by other spiritually blind people in churches or gatherings. God forbid, TO communities, Bible studies, gatherings, feast days. Not everybody within the TO has the indwelling, and not everybody in the churches of dispensationalism are lacking the indwelling. And if you have the indwelling, then you know what I mean when I say go by the guidance, because you hear him. You know that you can push him away. You know that that's not good. You know that there might be times where you don't hear him as clearly, and it might be because of you, or it might be a testing season. The Father does as he sees fit. But if you have the indwelling, you know what I'm talking about. And maybe how he talks to you isn't the exact same as how he talks to me or somebody else. So I don't try to give specific examples and say, if you hear like this, because what I don't know, I don't know. This year will be my 10th Passover. And in the past 9 Passovers, going on my next 10th Passover this year, I've learned that what I know that I know isn't as much as what I thought I used to know, except for in terms of what it pertains to me and the Father. Those things haven't changed. Does that make sense? So if you have the indwelling, if you've partaken of the fruit and not just think you have, folks, I'm trying to tell you, there are so many self-identified believers, TO, dispensationalists alike, etc., that they were on the way to the field. Folks, I'm telling you, this is scriptural. They were on their way to the master's field to taste of the fruit and then labor in. And they stopped along the way at a marketplace where a guy was like, hey, hold up, the master, he's not making anybody work anymore. Yo, I'm trying to tell you, no, it's all good, it's all good. Stop. What do you think he's sacrificed himself for? No, you don't have to go to the field anymore. Look, we got the fruit right here. And the fruit tastes good. But what they're not telling you is that fruit's been sitting there for a while. and it might look nice. Looks good from afar, but it's far from good. It's like that fig tree. From a distance, it looked like it might have figs, but then when Yeshua gets closer, he sees, oh, it's out of season. It's sickly. It doesn't even have any figs on it. He cursed it to wither and die as an example. And a lot of people get mad at the teachers and the preachers and the pastors and the churches and even in the TO community. And I understand why you're upset. If you're not led by God to be a leader, then you shouldn't be a leader. I understand that. But you have to understand this. The spiritually blind lead the spiritually blind into ditches. They're spiritually blind. And as it seems to me, a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing are deceived thereby. What am I saying? I'm saying that they've worn sheep's clothing long enough to believe that they are a sheep. I don't think every wolf in sheep's clothing is like, man, I'm gonna get him today. They really believe the false security and the false hope that they teach. And here's where it gets interesting, right? What they're preaching can actually be true hope and true security, but the way they preach it or from their own experience or how they're leading you in is what makes it false hope and false security. What do I mean by that? I mean, there are people who talk about biblical truths that are scriptural and don't twist them, but they actually don't know them. And the Father will let them do that. I mean, Paul even talks about this. He says, even when people are profaning God's name and stuff like that, and even when they're messing it up, Yeshua is still preached. It's still being spoken about, right? And it's not like he's like, yeah, that's good, but it serves a purpose is what I'm saying. Does that make sense? So before we get mad at the pastors and the preachers and the teachers that seem to be spiritually blind, let's think about what it means to be spiritually blind. Yeah, GMO fruit. Nice one, Bill. Good example there. Yeah, this is fruit that's been picked from the vine and therefore will go bad soon is what Jason T is saying. It happens, and it's happening a lot. From pastors in churches and in Messianic congregations to YouTube to Facebook to whatever else. Are we not told by the scripture that this will be so? I guess the scary thing is that unless you're led by the Father and the Spirit to go talk to them about this and for them to receive it, if you were to just go out of your own will and your own understanding, meaning to do well, to go to correct them or try to tell them, which maybe you have the indwelling and maybe you don't, right? And maybe they do or maybe they don't, and you go to correct them. But if it's not of the Father, if it's not being led by the Father, or at the least if you made that move and then he's telling you how to do it and you're ignoring him because he's telling you to talk about something else that you haven't planned, oh, that must be the demons, that must be my imagination. We can't be mad at the spiritually blind for being spiritually blind. Now, with that being said, the Pharisees claimed to see when they didn't. And they asked Yeshua, they said, are you saying we're blind? And he's saying, it's because you say that you see that you're blind. Meaning, if you were willing to confront and acknowledge that you don't know, you would have come to me and then you would know. So that is one of the reasons why I like to push this whole draw nigh to God. Why am I always saying this? Draw nigh to God so that he may draw nigh to you. Yeah, I had a pastor the other day tell me that we no longer have to draw nigh to God because we have the indwelling. I'm not convinced he has the indwelling. Not because he said that. And I could be wrong, so I'm not trying to say he doesn't. I'm saying I'm not convinced. Okay. There's a lot of people that are going to knock on a locked door, on a closed door. They miss the timing. They miss the timing, not just because they don't know the feast dates or they didn't have the right calendar or because they didn't have the right name pronunciation. Keep in mind, he's got a name that scripture says is beyond our comprehension. And then there's a new name later. So, I mean, the whole argument about the name seems silly. It even says that we're going to be given a pure language. So, I mean, you get it now, right now, if you get it now. Is that going to be the same when you get a pure language and his name is changed and he has a name that we can't comprehend? One of the things that's been coming up lately is what's that called? Cherubim. My wife and my mother-in-law, if they're watching, are probably going to start laughing at me. We listen to some Orthodox Jewish bands that are pretty cool, like Eighth Day and the Maccabeats. These are a cappella groups and stuff. Well, Maccabeats are. and so is what's the other one? The one that I like, 613, right? But Eighth Day, they're not necessarily a cappella. They do singing, but they play instruments and stuff too. And 613 does some comical stuff. They'll take some, sometimes they'll take songs of melodies that you recognize, but they'll change the words and talk about Passover or Exodus or whatever. And I find it really clever in how they do it. You know, it's kind of more Weird Al Yankovic style to where it's, yeah, I like 613 too, Karen. I do. I like them a lot. They're one of my favorites. I'm starting to like Eighth Day a little bit too now, though. But anyways, there's this, I always laugh when my mother-in-law will be playing Catan or something like that, because I told my mother-in-law, if you're going to be TO, you have to learn Catan, right? For any of those who remember that joke from years ago. Anyhow, they have some of these songs where they use Hebrew, and then they have some of these songs where they use Yiddish dialect, kind of like yarmulke, right? The Orthodox will actually call it a kippah, but yarmulke is the Yiddish word, right? So you have this Yiddish dialect that you often see in like certain parts of New York and stuff like that. So certain terms you might not recognize for Hebrew, but if you know Yiddish enough, or if you recognize the terms and you go, oh yeah, that's not Hebrew, it's not really a word, but it is. It's slang. It's Yiddish slang, okay? And so they have songs where they do that, and some of them sound silly because some of their songs, they say that they actually made up a word for themselves just for that song, just to be silly. So if you don't recognize the word, you're like, is that Yiddish slang or is that made up? And so we laugh about it. And so they got this one where they have the song that says cherry bim, cherry bam, cherry bib, bib, bap, bim, boom, bam, bo, something like that. And it sounds really silly. And I was laughing with my mother-in-law the other day, and I said, man, these guys are silly, you know, and it puts a smile on your face. And my wife looked it up, and it wasn't just made up noises. It's actually from a Jewish folklore story where it's kind of like a child's tale. It's folklore, right? It's got a moral to the lesson, right? The cherubim versus the cherubim, these two families, these two camps, cherubim, and they have one rabbi, one teacher of scripture between them, and they can't get along because one says cherubim and one says cherubim, right? And it's funny if you know about Jewish Orthodox culture and the people, about how much they argue and how that actually unifies them often, and how a lot of the culture and a lot of the men's traditions, some good, some bad, are about unifying through discussing even when you disagree, which is, you know, something else I wanted to bring up tonight. A lot of even in the TO community, okay, I keep seeing everybody talking about let's not bicker, let's not debate, and it's not good to bicker and debate in an ungodly fashion. But on the other swing of the pendulum, okay, because I see what they're talking about. A lot of the preachers come in and they say, man, we're all arguing about things that don't matter. We need to come together on foundational stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. That's good. That's true. But we should still be able to discuss those things. And a lot of people on this other far swing are like, you know, it's to the point where everybody's got different calendars, different names, different pronunciations, and Unitarian and Trinitarian, which out of all those topics, I think that's the one that's most important that needs to start being discussed more. And I see one side being presented a lot more than the other. And I think we need to be starting to come together on that and discuss, not put on boxing gloves, but discuss. And discussions can get heated as long as at the end of the day, you can still hug each other as brethren of the family. Why as Christians, our TO, are we so scared of doing that? You know, we make fun of the secular world, right? Maybe you don't, but we see the memes, right? And it talks about how the woke society and the generations of today can't handle, they're offended by everything. But in the body, we can't have an argument. We can't. What do you think the Bereans were doing when they were studying it all out? Now, they weren't calling each other names. They weren't unnecessarily dividing. All the things that these preachers and teachers are saying we shouldn't debate over, that's what they're talking about. They're not saying that we shouldn't discuss them. They're saying we shouldn't cut down and stuff like that. But I see a lot of preachers and teachers saying, you know what, we can't handle it, so let's just not talk about it. Now, that I have a problem with. Okay, I'm not saying I'm down for debate shows all the time. I'm not saying I want to debate with everybody about everything. I don't. I really don't. But there's certain things. God, why are we so scared to debate? Why can't you and I sit down and have a heated discussion? Because if you're passionate about it and you believe, and like with the Unitarian and Trinitarian, maybe that's not foundational, but I mean, that's heavy stuff, right? This is not some kind of, what is the new moon? Is it sliver? Is it conjunction? Is it the full moon? Which I'm seeing more people say that now, which I think is interesting. But why are we so scared? What the heck? I know everybody needs to be able to respect each other in a debate and stuff like that, but maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe all the people that everybody wants to go debate and discuss things shouldn't be the people that are doing it. I'm not naming names and I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying, if everybody says, well, these are our best teachers and these are our best preachers and these are our most learned people, and then we put them together to hash it out, and they can't handle it because they can't show love and peace and respect, and they can't handle themselves like we talked about in the Examine video with wisdom and understanding and knowledge, where they look at what Scripture says. It says, any of you who has something to say, let him show himself through good works and good speech, through wisdom and through his behavior and things like that. So if they can't do that, then why are we considering them our best teachers and preachers and most knowledgeable individuals? Why are those the leaders if they can't handle that situation? And I'm not trying to push anybody off of their stage or platform or anything like that, but I'm just saying, okay? Because I think heavy discussions are needed from time to time. And I think this whole being afraid to discuss it is garbage, in my opinion. Thus thinketh Ian. That's all I'm saying. I find that to be, I don't like this whole, and I get it, okay? I do. I get it. I get that the heavier meat. I understand that. Scripture talks about the greater laws and the lesser laws. It does say that. The greater commands and the lesser commands. Yeshua says it himself, right? And the biggest, most important thing, which we should all be able to say is foundational, is that you love God and that you love others. And everything else hangs upon that. Torah and the prophets is what Yeshua says. He says all that hangs upon it, right? So those other things are important too, but as long as we have those two things, now here's the problem. If we can't get in a room and discuss and debate when we agree to do so, anyways, yeah, that's one of the things I admire about the Orthodox Jewish community. I look at them and I say, man, we need to be more Jewish. And I know the dispensationalists are going to be like, oh, there it is. He just wants to be a Jew. First off, I have Hebrew DNA. Second off, Jew does not mean what people say it means. It's not even all the way what Orthodox Jews mean it to mean anymore. Go read Romans about what a true Jew is. Okay, Jew is from Judea or from the tribe of Judah. And you can also be brought in there from Benjamin. There was other tribes that got back in after the divorce because the groom died. Yeshua died, came back, so now they can get remarried according to the Torah. So those tribes that were divorced can come back. There's other tribes, okay? So, but anyways, I look at our distant cousins, our distant spiritual cousins, the Orthodox Jews that have taken man's tradition over the Torah on so many things, and they've allowed Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah and all that nonsense in, and best case scenario is just men's traditions, and they don't recognize the Messiah, which is the worst issue, right? But they're like our spiritual cousins. They still don't get in without getting through the door, and the door is Yeshua, right? But they're still the spiritual cousins. They're still under the Abrahamic covenant, right? And they have passion. They have passion for Scripture. They have passion for Torah and the prophets and the minor writings. They have passion for it because they understand and believe that this is the most important thing. And that's what we say. And then yet our preachers and teachers are either saying, let's just not talk about it anymore and just sing Kumbaya. That's what the New World Order does. Says, they put coexist on the bumper stickers, right? And I'm not saying we're supposed to be fighting people, but that's kind of what that's saying, right? Coexist. Let's just all get along and not discuss it. How about we get along, do the good works, and then after the good works, we go shut ourselves up in the synagogues or in the house churches or whatever, and we talk it out. And maybe we don't come out unified in those things, but we're still unified together in the sense of, hey, that's my brother. We argue every weekend about the moon and Shabbat and whatever else. Was that an angel or was that Yeshua Jacob was wrestling? Let's because they're heated up about it because it's important to them. Should we get focused on arguing things? No. But why are we so afraid of it to the point where people are saying, well, maybe Unitarian and Trinitarian are both correct? Folks, that is not possible. You cannot say that. You cannot say that. You can't say the Messiah is God and is not God. You can try to argue saying he is the Father, but he's a part of the Father and therefore not the Father, right? Or you can say he's agency but not the Father. But you can't say he is God and not God. You can't say that. It's either Trinitarian or Unitarian. You can't say it's both. You just cannot. So why are we being like the rest of the world on this crap? And people say, well, debates don't work. I've walked away from debates where my mind was changed. If you say debates never work, then I'm of the mindset that you've never listened to somebody else say something that opposed your thoughts and you weren't walking away going, what if I don't have it right? Because if you've ever had that, whether it's from a teaching or preaching or sermon or whatever, that is a debate. There was a debate of the person presenting the material with the thoughts and beliefs in your mind and heart. You just didn't vocalize it, and there wasn't somebody representing your argument on the thing. That doesn't mean it wasn't a debate. And if we are debating in a godly manner where it's a discussion, then that's exactly what it should look like, right? People preaching sermons to each other. You look at the book of Acts and you see when Stephen preached, he goes all the way back to Moshe, and that's right before they stone him. He goes through all the history trying to make his whole point. That's him presenting his case. Peter at Shavuot, he goes all the way back to the book of Joel, and he presents his case. Yeshua, when he's walking with them and they don't realize it's him down the road, and he starts preaching the Messiah, he starts back at Moshe, right? When you had the eunuch under the Candace, the queen of Ethiopia, went all the way back and preached forward, presenting the case. That is discussion. That is godly debate. You hear the other one out, present their case, and then you present your case. Wouldn't that unify? Why are we scared of this? Okay. Anyways, do you have your sandals on? Are you ready to put your sandals on? If the Father asks you to put your sandals on, are you ready to do so? Do you have them by the door? Is it possible you're walking around the house saying, yeah, I've got errands to do. I've got these good works to do. I'll get to them. And then the day gets past you and you didn't get to them. Okay, tomorrow. And now I'm not talking literal. I'm talking spiritual now. Because we are to work while the day is still here, while we still have time. Redeem the time, for it is evil, right? Give it all you got while you still can. Because you don't want to get to judgment and say, well, I was walking around the house with the car keys in my hand, and I had my cell phone, and I was ready to go. I just never got my shoes on. You don't want to say that. Why is there nothing on the altar to be presented? No, I never got my shoes on. Sometimes when it comes to putting your shoes on, we don't feel like it. It's like going to the gym. If you haven't gone in a while, or maybe you're tired, you want to skip leg day, whatever it is. And, I don't go to the gym, okay? So I'm not trying to shame anybody on the gym. I'm just saying, when I used to do workout, right, when I was in the military and stuff like that, I always knew that if I had skipped a week or a few days or whatever, I knew going back in was harder than it was when I was going often. And I think that's what it's like with the flesh in general. When it's something that we want to do mentally in our mind and even in our heart, it is hard to push the flesh to do it if it hasn't been done often. If we're not consistently, constantly doing it, it's a little bit harder. And the longer we go, right? I know that's the case with fasting. The longer I go without fasting, the less likely I am to want to. Oh, yeah, I probably should fast. A week goes by. Man, I probably should have fasted. Week goes by. Oh, man, I definitely should have fasted. I bet you that would have been smoother and I would have heard clearer. Next time I'll do it. But the next time it's even harder. Are your shoes by the door? Have you been putting on your shoes? If not, it might be hard to put on your shoes. So here's where I want to end tonight on, okay? Here was the gist that I got right before I came onto the show. When it comes to putting on the shoes, maybe it's been a while. Maybe they'll be a little bit uncomfortable because you haven't worn them in a while. Maybe you bought the shoes and they're brand new, but you never wore them and they need to be, so they're going to be a little stiff and stuff. Maybe you don't know everything about the details of the orders as a soldier before you leave the door. And so you're at the door and you got your hands on your hip and you're looking at your shoes and you're looking at the door and you go, well, I know I should probably grocery shop, but I think I still have stuff in the pantry and I don't know what I want to buy, and I made a list, but I couldn't find it. I'm going to go look for the list. You go look for the list and you can't find it. And then the day's over and you never go. Maybe sometimes when it comes to putting on the shoes, you have to just tell yourself, just do it. Just do it. It's okay to ask the Father for direction and clarity and things like that. But if you wait on him a little bit and it doesn't seem to go, and you don't hear the Father saying, wait longer, then maybe it's step out and move. Put on the shoes. See what happens. Get up and go. But I don't have the Romans Road salvation memorized. Whatever. You have your story, right? If so be that you have the Spirit within you, he'll guide you. He'll give you the words in the hour, Scripture says. All right. Well, I think I'm done for tonight. I think I got the general gist. And I don't know. Is there any questions or concerns or anything? Yeah, I agree with this, Karen. It's a bummer when you agree with someone's argument, but you don't agree with their behavior and manner. I've had that where it's like, man, I don't even want that person to represent my view on this because they're hitting the points and they're brilliant, but man, they're being a jerk about it. And so then you don't want the belief to be represented by that behavior and attitude. Esther Jade Apothecary, beard oils and such, skin toner, drops for your toilet to smell well. But yeah, so if you're going to do Purim and you haven't done a Purim study or you're not familiar with anything like that, you can find our Esther show here at the DNG, the Draw Nigh to Creator show here at Take on the World TV under the playlist. You have to go to playlist, or you have to go to live now. Things have changed. I don't know if that was YouTube or what, but you have to go to live and then or go to the playlist, and then it's in there somewhere. And I think on the Take on the World list, it's got the Esther first and second video split apart. There's other videos in between. I don't have access, so I can't go in there and rearrange things. So if that is the case, or if you're having troubles finding it, let me know. You can also find it if you just type in DNG 144 on YouTube. I don't upload videos on that channel, but you'll see that I have playlists, and you'll see I have a playlist for Tea Talks, and I've got the Exodus playlist, and they're all in there, and they're all in order. Unlike in other locations, Jeff's got it on his one as well. But yeah, so we have the Esther videos, right? So I think the first one's something like the Myrtle's Diadem. And if you're already going, why would that be the title? Go check it out. Go check it out. Chances are you will not walk away disappointed. And then the second one was something like Queen Takes Bishop, and it's got a chessboard. Really cool imagery that my wife makes. Y'all don't know how much work my wife puts into the images on these things. Like she'll do the design, and then like right before the show, she'll mess with like fusing in the images sometimes, like the DNG logo. She'll make it fade into the background a little bit, have lighter lines or solid lines or weave in. I'm just like, man. It don't matter, but she does make it look nicer, But I'm just like, man, I would not put any of that work into it. For any of you guys who know, when I used to do Facebook videos, it was literally just my Draw Nigh to God painting that Alicia made years ago. And that's all it was. That's all I would show for every video. So you had no idea. You'd have to look at the title. Otherwise, they all look the same. All right. Well, I'm done for now. Oh, this chair goes down. I guess I could have sat down like this. I feel weird now because my legs are like really high up. All right. Well, shalom, shalom. I hope Yah used this video for you who listened live and otherwise to help you with your walk, with your spiritual walk, with your journey with him. Help you maybe consider some things for the first time or reconsider something, maybe to be reminded of something you already know. for an encouragement to put the sandals on, to be prepared in and out of season, to share your hope, to share what you know of the good news of Shalom of God. May he guide you with his Spirit according to his will, so that you receive direction through his word and his Spirit on what steps to take, where to take. May he put it in your heart to keep you on the path, to not turn to the left or to the right, but to continue moving, to be encouraged to move forward towards him. And that if you stopped, to start walking again. If you sat down, to stand up, put the shoes on, move forward. And if you started walking in the wrong direction, to repent, turn around, and walk towards him. May he guide you in these things. May he give you shalom according to his will. May he show you what it means, if you don't know what it means, to partake of the fruit first before you're a laborer in the field. Far too many people are working fields that aren't even his, talking about we're laborers in the field, and they're just hitting dirt, and there's nothing there. There's no fruit there. And what the words they say are good, and some of their actions seem good, but they don't know him. They're not hired by him. They're not going to receive the payment at the end if they don't leave that destitute field of nothingness that some guy in the market told them to go to because it was an easier path or something. May he guide you and bless you and keep you. May he look upon you with favor. And what are these links here? Bring me down to a handful of Q-tips. Okay. I don't know what these links are. Karen, what is this link you've got in here? I see links, but I don't know what they are. I don't know if Myrtle's diadem is this one. Okay, so that's the first one for the Esther videos. I really enjoyed that video. That was a real fun one, you know. I mean, I feel like the Spirit moves in my videos, you know, in general. I'm not going to say there's ones that I don't feel like he moved and stuff like that, but there are certain videos I enjoy the most. And the Esther videos are right up there. The Jonah videos were really good. The Exodus videos were outstanding. And then the Rock Tumbler videos, those are really good. You know, the ones we never talk about anymore that were pretty decent too is we did videos on Daniel and Joseph. We did 3 videos on Daniel, which has been coming to mind lately. The one about not complying with the enemy, not compromising. Right? I think it says something about compromise line, and then it says yeah, right? And you don't cross the line to compromise, kind of thing. Anyways. Okay, is there any more? Okay. Yeah. So that's the Myrtle's diadem. That's the Esther video. Okay. So may he bless you and keep you. May he guide you with his Spirit in all truth, give you understanding and knowledge and wisdom as you ask of him without doubting according to his will. May he keep your feet on the path. May his word be a lamp to your feet to that path. May he keep you motivated and encouraged to move forward with the body in unification with the body in spirit and in truth. May he bless you and keep you. May he look upon you with favor and give you shalom. Shalom, shalom. Where is my...
Yeah. He's alive. It's really just that simple, man. Draw nigh to God, man. Yeah. Draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh unto you. Draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh unto you.